So admit it, you also wanted Ned Yost fired. Yes, the guy that in 2014 took the Royals to their first playoff appearance since 1985, going all the way to Game 7 of the World Series and winning it all in 2015. The Royals Hall of Famer. That guy. You typed up a rant on Facebook and called for his firing mid-game because Aaron Crow gave up a home run to Daniel Nava. Your college dorm would only get Cardinals games, but that didn't stop you. After your Donovan Chara's relief appearance in the 2014 wildcard game, again, before the game even ended, you warned your Facebook followers ahead of time that you would not just call for Ned Yost to be fired after the game, but also make a detailed case for them to hire Ron Gardenhire, who was just fired by the Twins. How pathetic. Of course, as we all know, a few weeks later you would make a direct apology to your 200 or so Facebook friends about your words on Ned Yost and how you were wrong to ever doubt him. You typed it as if Ned himself would read it. From that moment, you would get suspiciously quiet on Ned's managerial skills. Yeah, that may or may not have been me. And yes, those were real posts from a long deleted Facebook account. I knew archiving those posts would be helpful at some point. I'm not going to go into detail on Ned's legacy today, but the short answer is that 2015 sealed it. Sure, I know it's not that simple, and you can say whatever you want about his in-game decisions at any point in his Royals tenure, but he ended the Royals' lengthy playoff drought and brought the Royals their second World Series title. End of story. With that being said, there was a moment in 2013, a little over a year before that magical playoff run, where Ned's seat was so hot it seriously seemed like the Royals were preparing for a change. The story begins hours after the 2012 season concluded, when the Royals fired hitting coach Kevin Seitzer. Ned Yost himself pushed for the move. He cited an underperforming offense, a lack of progress from their young hitters, and a desire to hit more home runs instead of constantly hitting singles and doubles. So much for keep the line moving, but keep in mind the emphasis on power. Ned wanted to fill the role internally, not just the hitting coach but also his assistant. They did exactly that, naming minor league hitting coordinator Jack Maloof their hitting coach. Maloof previously held the same title with the Florida Marlins, not just serving as their hitting coach from 1999 to 2001, but also as their first minor league hitting coordinator in 1993. He was okay in those 3 years with the Marlins, but he was honestly better suited helping in the minor leagues. The other name, and honestly the most puzzling, was Andre David, who would serve as Maloof's assistant. He was the hitting coach of the rookie league team in Surprise, Arizona. That may sound like the crazy part, but trust me, it's not. David previously served as the Royals' major league hitting coach, taking over for a fired Jeff Penland during the 2005 season. The team recently saw manager Tony Pena resign, and Buddy Bell would not become the manager for another day or two. David would not even last a year, as he would be reassigned back to the minors during the 2006 season. Yes, he was tossed into a very tough situation during his first stint, and maybe he deserved the benefit of the doubt under different circumstances. Even then, it just did not look right to promote a hitting coach that previously could not make it under Buddy Bell and Allard Baird. This decision felt like Ned was scapegoating Seitzer. Ned mentioned the young hitter struggling, but that seemed like a stretch. Salvador Perez was third on the team in OPS+, ranking behind a breakout season from Billy Butler, and Alex Gordon cementing himself as a cornerstone piece in Kansas City. Alcides Escobar hit .293 and looked like their long-term leadoff hitter. Lorenzo Cain looked like the center fielder of the future, albeit in a limited sample size. Now, Mike Moustakas started strong but struggled down the stretch, and Eric Hosmer struggled throughout the season. But both were promoted the season before, and 2012 was their first full season on a major league roster. You would think a little continuity with Seitzer versus a new hitting coach would be better for them. In a prior video I mentioned Johnny Giovatello's struggles, but Ned Yost gave Yuniesky Betancourt and Chris Getz playing time before Gio, and never seemed to give him a vote of confidence, let alone a chance. That's not on Seitzer. I go into more detail in that video. In fact, it was one of the launch videos for this channel. I'm only saying this in case the video seems a little rough. I'll admit, it is. As for Seitzer himself, he was drafted by the Royals as a player, and had multiple solid seasons for the team. I'm not saying he was the most popular guy in Kansas City, but if given the choice between Seitzer and Ned, most fans probably would have chosen Seitzer. And it's worth mentioning that Ned inherited Seitzer when he became the Royals manager in 2010. Believe it or not, Seitzer was a Trey Hillman hire. He was not hired by Ned Yost. Ned probably saw a chance to hire his own guy, but at the very least, he deserved another season just to maintain some consistency among a young team. This move, as you would expect, would backfire quickly. On May 29th, Jack Maloof pretty much said screw this and went to the media to express his frustration with the offensive struggles. He blamed spacious Kauffman Stadium in that there was no reward to try and hit home runs. In fact, he predicted the Royals would finish last in the American League in home runs. He also called Billy Butler a doubles machine. which was not historically wrong. However, Billy was coming off a career year, hitting 29 home runs under Kevin Seitzer. Looks like someone was able to get some power out of him. Ned Yost tried to calm these comments, saying it was never the idea to get up there and try to hit homers. But let me rewind to the day he fired Kevin Seitzer, where he is flat out quoted by the Kansas City Stars' Bob Dutton as saying, and I quote, "I think we've got a group of young power hitters who are capable of hitting homers. And a walk, a base hit, and boom, there's 3 runs. I think that's the major difference in philosophy." I don't know, you tell me what he meant. The next day, on May 30th, after losing 8 games in a row and 19 of their last 23, the Royals would get rid of both hitting coaches and notably name Hall of Famer George Brett as the interim hitting coach. That's a story for another time, not just Brett, but his first game in charge. It only took 2 months of baseball for the Royals to realize they may have made a mistake. While no other moves were made, the focus was quickly turned to Yost, who, let me remind you, pushed for Seitzer's firing in the first place. GM Data Moore defended Yost, if barely, simply saying, Ned's been very steady and consistent in the way he has led the team. Despite that, Ned's seat was warming up. Only issue, if a midseason move was to be made, who would take over? Bench coach Chino Kadahia had managed 2 games in the majors as an interim, both thanks to a Bobby Cox suspension, but his last managed game before that was in 1996 in rookie ball. Mike Jirschele, longtime manager of the AAA Omaha Storm Chasers and future third base coach, was also rumored as a possible interim. Even George Brett himself was rumored, not as an interim but the full-time replacement, though that seemed more like speculation than anything concrete. With Ned's role in question, one name did surface as a potential replacement, and it was a name that came so far out of left field it wasn't even in the ballpark, maybe even past the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Crap, it was so far out of left field it may have originated over the river at the old Metro-North Mall in the Northland. Not long after the change, 71-year-old Jim Fregosi was mentioned as the possible next manager for the Royals. While this name seemed completely random for Royals fans, Fregosi did work alongside Data Moore with the Braves before he became the Royals general manager. His son, Jim Fregosi Jr., worked in the Royals front office alongside Dayton. Fregosi himself was working with the Braves front office at the time this rumor surfaced. The two were familiar with each other, but would he have been a good fit as the Royals manager? If we're being honest, you could have done much worse than Fregosi.
And I can promise you, they aspire to play for Mike Matheny.
But that's not exactly complimenting him. He won the 1993 National League pennant with the Phillies, but he only had one other playoff appearance in 15 years of managing. Even with the Phillies, Fregosi was not exactly popular among the locals, with his inability to develop younger players being mentioned. What a great fit for a Royals team filled with younger stars. He had not managed since 2000 with the Blue Jays, and to be honest, he only got that gig because prior manager Tim Johnson lied about his experience in the Vietnam War, and the Blue Jays needed to install someone else a few weeks before opening day. Yes, that's a real sentence that I just said, and I'm not exaggerating. That is exactly how he got the job. Moving on from Ned Yost was one thing, but this was an odd choice for a replacement. Part of me wants to compare this to the White Sox hiring Tony La Russa before the 2021 season, but I'm not sure that's fair. La Russa had not managed for a decade, while Fregosi had not managed for a little longer, 13 years to be exact. Even if he saw the La Russa hire being a disaster from the start, you could at least try to justify it by citing his 3 World Series rings and several playoff berths. I'm not saying that's the correct take, but it is a take. Fregosi, on the other hand, had fewer playoff berths than La Russa has World Series rings. Maybe Fregosi could have worked under the right circumstances, but for a young roster, Fregosi did not seem like the right choice. I wouldn't even call him the most convenient considering Fregosi himself was still working with the Braves. The Royals would end up sticking with Yost, and they would rebound as a whole, finishing with an 86-76 record, their first winning season in a decade. Just as Jack Maloof predicted, the Royals finished last in the American League in home runs. George Brett would step down as a hitting coach not long before the trade deadline, but he left with the offense looking much better despite the lack of power. Yost would return for the 2014 season, and while he would take the team all the way to Game 7 of the World Series, it was not always a smooth ride. My old Facebook post at the beginning sum it up. If, during the wild card game, the Royals failed to pull off one of the greatest comebacks in Major League history, I'm not sure we see Ned return for 2015. Maybe Data Moore uses the playoff appearance to justify a return, but I'm sure the fan base would disagree. As for Jim Fregosi, less than a year after the rumors, while on an MLB alumni cruise, he would suffer multiple strokes, and a week later, on February 14, 2014, he would sadly pass away. Fregosi never saw the Royals, his former colleague Data Moore, and more importantly his son Jim Jr. at the peak of their success. His son remained with the Royals front office until his unfortunate and untimely passing after the 2021 season. On Kevin Seitzer, for the 2014 season, he joined the Toronto Blue Jays as their hitting coach, but he would most notably join the Atlanta Braves in 2015. As their hitting coach, he is credited for Atlanta's best offensive seasons, including their 2021 World Series victory. When the Braves announced Seitzer would not return for 2025, I made a pitch in my off-season preview video to bring him back to Kansas City in some form. He would instead join the Seattle Mariners as their hitting coach. They got a good one. Sometimes the best moves are the ones you do not make. That may be true of the decision to keep Ned Yost as manager of the Royals. Say whatever you want, but the fact remains that Ned Yost is a two-time American League champion and a World Series champion. I think the biggest what-if has nothing to do with Ned Yost, but with Kevin Seitzer. Do the Royals still struggle to start the 2013 season, and would they have fired Seitzer anyways? Or would the Royals play even better and possibly make the playoffs in 2013? Regardless, Seitzer would get his World Series ring in 2021, while Ned Yost would cement his legacy in Kansas City. If you enjoy watching me channel rage from my freshman year of college and want to see more, then like, subscribe, or even share this video. My Facebook account has long been deleted, so it's not like I can share it myself. I'm here to remember all those Royals moments you'd rather not remember. On the topic of former managers, my latest video and my opening day special highlighted a difficult decision Tony Pena had to make ahead of the 2003 season. Who would get the chance to start opening day? If that's not rage-inducing enough for you, then my prior video was on Kyle Davies. I spent 16 minutes talking about Kyle Davies. That should tell you all you need to know about this channel. Until next time.
He absolutely made the right decision. I mean, it'd been ludicrous to try to send Alex Gordon in that situation. Just ludicrous. And anybody that thinks not doesn't know what they're talking about. So Mike knows.